if you've continued with us from the 2020 packages, I mean, even
the real
better.
ones.
Like, guys, you are absolutely smashing it. You guys are been with us since the start. I can see some names here already that have been here since the start. Steve Coleman Williams, Anthony Mullins, lots of you, Chris Randall. Lovely to see you all, Neil Bolton. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So tonight, is it our Christmas extravaganza? We have got a special treat of having 5 guests, not 3 tonight, 5 guests.
A big one.
Big one. So, Jess, do you want to just go through the order quickly that everybody's going to be trying?
Absolutely. So we've run through this a few times now, so we're absolute pro. So first of all, we are kicking off, well, Andy's kicking off, and he'll be talking to Morgan from Penderyn. Then I'm lucky enough to talk with Luke, and we'll be talking through the Bimber. And then we'll be tasting the Nc'nean with Annabel Thomas. And then we've got Highland Park with David Miles, and we're rounding off with an Ardbeg with Iain Croucher from North Star Spirits.
That sounds like quite an evening. Guys, if any of you missed any of that, it is too late. You will have to play catch up, and you will have
It'll be a surprise.
which dram you're drinking. But welcome everybody. I think we should probably just get started because we've got a lot of whiskey to try and to talk about. And please get involved tonight. Please get involved, everybody. Please come in with your tasting notes. If you have any questions for our guests, please get involved, because we've got lots happening tonight, and it's better when you guys get involved and you talk. So please, yeah, absolutely. So without further ado, I am going to say goodbye to Jess.
I'll be back for Bimber. Have fun.
She'll be back for Bimber. So goodbye, Jess. And I am going to invite Morgan onto the stage, the pour and sip stage.
Hey.
How's it going, Morgan?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Really good. Whereabouts are we speaking to you from today?
So I'm speaking from Swansea today, only about a mile from our new Swansea distillery, which is quite fun.
Yes. How new is that? Is it 3 distilleries now?
Yeah, 3 distilleries now. The last one opened in the summer. I'd probably say 4 months ago, maybe 5 at a push. And that was the one in Swansea, which has been our biggest one yet, and really exciting to work in.
Okay, we can talk about that a bit later on. So we, as discussed, we have had Penderyn on before with your colleague, but no one has met you before here from our pour and sip subscribers. So please talk to us a bit about yourself, Morgan, and let us know how you got into the whiskey industry and found yourself in your current role at Penderyn.
Okay, so I've been in Penderyn is my first job in the whiskey industry. I wasn't in it previously. I did join the company just over 4 years ago now, and I actually joined working on the stills, and then sort of worked my way through different sections when they needed people, and ended up as a brand ambassador doing tastings over the 4-year process of doing lots of different jobs at Penderyn. And so now my job is essentially going around doing different tastings, and I also look after independent small retailers and keep them happy, do tastings at their stores and things like that.
Sounds like a horrible job.
Oh, I know, it's a hard to get up in the
morning. Steve Coleman Williams here saying he's got beard envy. I'm assuming Steve. More beard envy tonight. I think Iain there's got quite a nice beard going on as well, and Luke as well has got quite a nice beard. So lots of beards going on tonight, really hitting the whiskey stereotype of bearded white man. Yeah, checking. Right, so talk to us about Welsh whiskey, because that's dating back to at least 1705, and it kind of died around the era of the First World War. And Penderyn opened and kind of became the first Welsh distillery, of its type. So what happened to Welsh whiskey?
Yeah, so before Penderyn, which was started in 1999, before that, it was 100 years previous that there was a distillery up in Bala in North Wales, and it was it was started up, but it didn't last very long. It only lasted about 9 years, and it came at an unfortunate time where the Welsh people were going for a temperance movement and sort of cracking down on alcohol, which is why the distillery was actually started by English people that wanted to use the local water in the mountains. And this was in the late 1800s. But yeah, it was only about 9 years. They couldn't get any workers because we're very stubborn in Wales. And if we don't want to work there, we won't. And when the church says something to do something back then, you listened. So it didn't last long, and the costs were too high because they had to import the workers. So they were shut down, and then no one did anything in Wales in terms of whiskey distillation until us. So 100 years of just nothing. in Wales. And then from 1999 to now, I think we're at about 5 distilleries, 5 separate companies. Sorry, there are more distilleries, but there are 5 separate companies producing whiskey in Wales now, which has been very exciting to try all the different products coming out.
Yeah, and it must be exciting to be kind of the forefront, the leader of that pack. So
yes, yeah. In fact, we only recently has Welsh whiskey become protected as an entity. So now there are rules to follow, similar to how the Scottish distilleries have to follow their rules up there.
Talk to us about that, actually, because I wasn't asked that, but that's quite an interesting point to talk about in Welsh whiskey in general, because obviously with what happens in Japan with the kind of the rules that have been laid out, what has there been put to protect Welsh whiskey as an entity?
So I don't know all the rules because this was only a few months ago and I wasn't really involved in the talks, unfortunately. But I do know that there were certain things that a lot of people tried to keep in that we couldn't do, which was a bit sad. There was stuff like they wanted to use only Welsh barley. However, unfortunately, barley does not grow very well in Wales. So we had to explain to some of the newer companies that once you get to a certain size, you won't be able to do that anymore. It just isn't possible. Yeah. But there were some other rules that we were looking at putting in place about the number of distillations, but we had to scrap that as well. So I think the main ones that we've done are currently to try and keep all the jobs in Wales, so the bottling and things like that, to try and keep it all as part of a local feel to it. But there aren't too many rules regarding the actual production process itself. And I think we wanted to keep it open to experimentation and allowing people to do new and interesting things.
Sure. So there's no rules on wood or anything like that? As it kind of
no, definitely no. There are no hard rules on things like that.
Awesome. And that keeps it open to experimentation. So talk to us a little bit about Penderyn. If anyone who's not tried it before doesn't know much about it, give us a little history, how it came about.
Yeah, so the story goes, as I'm sure most distilleries have a starting story, was 3 men sitting in a pub called the Nc'nean, which is only about a mile from the original distillery, and still there, recently reopened as well, which is really interesting to see the idea of where it started. But the idea was they drank through their whiskey shelf and they didn't find anything Welsh, and then they got curious, so they started looking up why there wasn't any Welsh whiskey. And they couldn't find a good answer. So they decided then that there should be a Welsh whiskey. And if someone was going to do it, they may as well do it. So they had the building already. The guy who owned the pub also owned a barn just up the road. And they converted that into the first distillery using a still that had never been turned on before. It was called the Faraday still. And it's the heart of Penderyn. It's a hybrid still between a pot still and a column still. And it produced this lovely spirit that we then had to have Dr. Jim Swan, some people may have heard of. He came down and essentially taught us about the whiskey side of things. We had the passion for drinking, but we didn't have the knowledge on how to make a good whiskey and how to manage the wood in the barrels. And it was Jim Swan that taught us most of those things.
We've had lots and lots of new distilleries, and I think Annabel might say as well about that very special man coming and helping out.
He was. He really was.
But what is the difference between, your still, so in comparison to the traditional one? What advantages are you gaining from this Faraday still?
Yeah, so I'll take sort of the traditional Scottish style, the double pot stills, as a comparison for now. Our still will do, it's a 2,500 litre still. We've got more now, but they're all 2,500 litres. And it'll do a 12-hour distillation and go from our 8% beer all the way to an 89 to 92% spirit in just the one distillation, although there is 12 hours. So whereas the Scottish ones, for example, we also have some of those that we're experimenting with, but we don't produce loads of from those. But our ones of those, same size, 2,500 litres, you end up having a 6-hour distillation and then a following 4.5 to 5 hour distillation. So it's slightly longer to use our stills, but you're getting a higher strength spirit as well, because the double pot stills usually only go to about 75%.
And what does that, that's like kind of exceptionally strong at 92% ABV. What kind of does that do for your particular whiskey?
So for our whiskies that work so well it makes the spirit really easy to influence because it's so pure. It's when you start putting it in the barrels and adding different flavors, you end up having a lot of flavors coming through quite quickly, which is great in that it's easy to influence, but also has been detrimental in that it's been over influenced by something and then the flavor has gone. which is why a lot of our maturations involve bourbon barrels, and we often do finishes in wine barrels where it'll only spend a year or two in the wine barrel after the full maturation in the bourbon barrel, and that's all because of this light, delicate spirit.
Sure. Okay, cool. Well, let's talk about onto whiskey. Let's talk about this particular dram that we're drinking tonight.
Yes, so this is actually quite fun for me as well, because this is our first blended whiskey.
There you go.
Yeah, it's the first one we've ever done, and it's part of the Icons Wales that we do, which is the collector's range, which we call it. They all celebrate different Welsh things, and we just use them. We've celebrated everything from celebrities like Bryn Terfel to just the feeling of Wales. This particular one is to celebrate Patagonia, obviously from the name, and we blended it with a La Alazana whiskey, so that from Patagonia, and the idea was to connect that to us, because Patagonia, part of 150 people from Wales moved down there to sort of colonize the area and to preserve Welsh heritage in the mid 1800s. And from there now, you've got about 5,000 Welsh-speaking people living in South America, which is just very fun to see, and has made a great story for us. So the whiskey itself, though, is a combination of an STR cask, which I'm assuming a lot of people will know, but in case anyone doesn't, just stands for scraped, toasted, and recharred. It's where you scrape away a few millimeters of the charcoal, and then you are toasting it and then freshly charring it before you put the whiskey in. It's that combined with a brandy cask as well. So you get some nice flavors of like floral and like fruity flavors that'll come with brandy cask, and then the STR can give some toffee notes as well from the caramelizing of the sugars in the wood.
Yeah, I mean, I get loads of kind of like orchard fruits, kind of bramble apples as well. It's kind of the thing jumping out at me on the nose. I'm just going to read out some of the tasting notes that are coming because I'm kind of missed them all. Loads and loads coming through here. I've not even tried it yet, though, so I would like to have a sip of this. But yeah, there's quite a lot of tasting notes coming out. And how is this just come out? This one?
Yeah, so this was only released. Sorry, one sec. It was just before my honeymoon because I wasn't here when it was released, which was only 2 months ago. So yeah, September. I think it was mid-September. I wasn't there for the release because I was away, but yeah, it was mid-September. And it is our latest icon, and I think it's number 11 now. So we've done 11, and the idea was to do 50 things to celebrate Wales over the last.
Who have the people been apart from Bryn Terfel? Gareth Bale?
We didn't do one to do Bale, but we've done them about sports. So we did Ymar O'Hyd, which is a song that we sing at sports games, and it is a football casing, and we did it for Wales getting through the qualifiers earlier in the year. We've done Headliner to celebrate David Lloyd George, who was a Welsh Prime Minister, and he was the one that actually introduced the whiskey law that it has to be in a barrel for 3 years in the UK.
Okay. Wow.
Who else have we done? Tom Jones? No, not Tom Jones. Dylan Thomas. Dylan Thomas. We did. That was one of the early ones back before I even joined the company. Okay,
fair. That's really cool. Just some of these tasting notes coming through now. Neil Bolton saying big hit of pear drops. Juranek said just me, or is there foam bananas on the nose? Steve Conwell Williams, rhubarb and custard sweets with crisp green apple following. Chris Turner, pear drops on the nose for me. Neil Bolton, foam banana and pear drop combo. There's loads of notes coming through for this one. Malcolm Tucker, the nose on the Penderyn reminds me of poaching pears in white wine infused with a Madagascan vanilla pod.
Okay.
I feel like I need to come over to yours for dinner because that sounds like a lovely dinner.
I was going to say, I don't know how to compare to that.
It's not the kind of thing I make ever. Stuart McGregor had a few Penderyn whiskies in the past. Always liked them. Managed to get one from the SMWS distilled on my birthday. Not the year, just the date in January. Let's see. Joe F, green apples and red cherries too. Ali C, pear drops, Airfix glue on the nose for me. That's a really cool, interesting tasting. Steve Williams has got a question for Morgan. When will I'm not going to try and pronounce this at all. When will the casks in the Danya Oga be ready for bottling?
In the
DANYROGAF.
I'm not sure what that is.
There we go. The casks, unless that's a typo, but I wouldn't think it's a typo just because it looks like Welsh.
Yeah, I mean, that seems very specific. I will say, I mean, with the company being at the size it is now, I mean, there's a chance that I just don't know about this particular part of it, but I don't recognize it at all.
Okay. Real Bonga, a friend gifted me a Penderyn whiskey because the bottle was so nice. The whiskey was quite tasty too. Chris Randall, fallen apples in the meadow. Everybody mentioning about the lovely bottles. Steve Conn Williams, I've mentioned it once, but my pride whiskey is the Madeira from Penderyn, signed by the WRU Grand Slam team.
Oh, wow.
That sounds like a kind of thing that you shouldn't open. David, very smooth and goes down very easy. Another great whiskey from Penderyn. I have to say that was my first reaction to this, thinking it was I know smooth's overused, but soft and delicate. Lots of, like I said, it's very green, crisp and green for me. Lots of apple notes, like vanilla, honey, but nice and soft and really, really light and delicate for me.
Yeah, I will say our spirit is often described as quite a feminine spirit. It's something that comes across, and it's weird. Sometimes my head automatically goes to the fact that our master distilling team is all women, which is just by chance. But I realize it's not really that, because it's the still more than it is them affecting.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you were saying about this, the way it's distilled on your Faraday still. Sweet apples. I mean, apple seems to be the absolute kind of overriding thing that everybody's saying here. Is that something to do with the brandy casks?
It's likely to be the brandy cask, but also the other thing is the spirit that comes off our stills it's got a slight vanilla note to it. If you ever get down to the distillery, you can have a try of it. If anyone ever's down, usually on the tour, we let people have a little nose and a taste. You can get some vanilla and some like apple pear notes from the still itself before it's been in the barrel as well. So they do run through a lot of our whiskies, that kind of vanilla note.
Because that seems to be the absolute overriding hit that everybody's getting here. Jim Glancy, taste matches the nose, big pear drop hit. Big pear drop hit, not big pear drop hit. Jester, when I worked at the BBC World Service, we used to broadcast Welsh for Patagonia.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Wow. I think that must be an awesome accent, this kind of Welsh South American.
I can only imagine. I mean, I think it's something like there are like 50,000 people that are directly descended from like the 150 Welsh people that went over.
Okay.
But only about 5,000 like Welsh speakers. You know, it's still there, but it's.
Malcolm Stucker palate, now eating the poached pear, studded with cloves, followed by woody notes and peach. Steve Conn Williams, taste has a hint of apple sours with a Z. Have you ever had that one before? Apple sours with vanilla custard. Vanilla custard, I do like Penderyn whiskey. Stuart McGregor, sweet taste reminiscent of cherry lips. Apparently, to Steve Conn Williams, the Dania O'Gaff is the national show caves. So, yeah.
Okay. I then in that if it is something that we do, unfortunately, I'm not too sure about it. But if anyone wants to get in contact with me afterwards, I'm sure I can find out in the company.
Steve, email us and we'll find that. We'll find that out for you. Peter Gilmore, Argentina and Wales. How's it come about? What are you describing about that? And
it's. I mean, we're always looking for new stories and Welsh things to cover. And not that I'm a part of it, but I know that essentially we do a big vote on a few different options of Welsh things we want to celebrate. So Patagonia, I think, was up there because it's not well known that there is a little Welsh colony over there, and we think it is kind of amazing to have that, just a separate part of the world that's got all our culture.
David Thompson's asking, and we kind of mentioned this about the STR casks, is asking to talk about Jim Swan's influence. Were there any other influences of his other than the STR casks for you?
For us, well, I mean, it depends how you look. Well, obviously the STR cask, which runs through our rich oak, which is part of our core range. I mean, other than that, he trained our current master distillers. He trained them for 5 years before he passed away. So, I mean, his influence is always going to run so heavily through our company. Even now, I mean, I've got when after he passed away, I managed to save one of his last small batches, and I've still got it in my collection, just to have that little bit of history of like one of his last ones that he did.
And that's not open, I take it.
No, that's not open. I did have to. I bought two and I drank one.
That's as any collector would in any stage ever.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a rich oak small batch. But yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say because it was he'd passed away before I joined the company. I was very lucky in to have heard that most of the things I've heard have all been stories from other people in the company. So it'd be hard for me to say for certain how big his influence is, but there's no doubt in my mind that it's heavily influenced the way we mature, how our spirit has done. Everything was sort of based around how he taught us to do things.
Sure. And lastly, before we say goodbye, talk to us about the future. What is in the pipeline for Penderyn coming up? Any?
Wow. I mean, we just opened a new distillery a few months ago, so I don't think there's another distillery in the pipeline for a while.
Yeah,
certainly.
Because obviously you don't just do whiskey.
Pardon?
So what are the other distilleries doing?
Oh, they are doing whiskey. So actually, yeah, I suppose that what we're going to come out with is kind of interesting. Our North Wales distillery in Llandudno is doing peated malt, which is something that we've never done regularly. We have done before, but only very, very rarely. This is a distillery doing just peated malt. Okay. So that's about 2 years into maturation now. So we'll be coming out with a core range that is peated malt. The one that we currently do, which if anyone has tried, is actually a peated finish. So we use X-Laphroaig barrels. So having a true peated spirit will be really interesting.
And where's that peat from?
I don't know. It comes in ready peated. So we buy the malt in. We don't have our own malting process or anything like that. And I'm not too sure where the peat comes from.
Okay. And that's Llandudno?
That's Llandudno in North Wales.
Oh, yes. Know it well.
Yeah, it's a really nice town up there.
No, it is. I've spent time in Llandudno. It is a nice place. Well, thank you very much, Morgan, for all your help. And like I said, Steve Colmore, if you want to get in touch with us, we'll try and find out about that for you. But thank you very much, Morgan, for joining us and being our first guest on our Christmas extravaganza. If you want to stick around to the end, please do, and we'll raise a dram. How do you say cheers again in Welsh?
Iechyd da.
Iechyd da.
Iechyd da.
Cheers, everybody. Okay. Goodbye, Morgan. Cheers. Right, I'm just going to invite Jess back on. Jess, have you disappeared? No, you're not. You're there.
I was like, yeah.
So many people. I'm just like kind of going through. That was a great way to start the evening, I have to say.
No, what a story, what a dram.
Yes, amazing stuff. Right, I think we should swiftly move on to Luke at Bimber, who is 5 minutes from my house. But anyway.
No way.
Hello.
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Just waiting for you guys here at the distillery today.
I was going to say, you're in the distillery. This is so much
fun.
I'm
at the distillery. It's homemade, so we're gonna do it from home. The tour will be today from home. So if you guys like, I'm happy to give you a little sneak peek around the machines.
I think the pour and sip guests would absolutely love that. So that could be a good way to a good thing to do. Right, I will leave you in the capable hands of Jess, and I will see you. Bye. I'm just
amazing. Oh, so nice to meet you. So yeah, we already know
nice
that you're
to meet you, Jess.
Distillery State. Yeah, so can you tell us a bit? I mean, 5 minutes from Andy's house, but for those who don't know where Andy lives,
no idea.
Yeah, so whereabouts is Bimber?
So Bimber is based in North Acton, Park Royal, London. We've been here since. Say again?
You're not too far from Wembley.
Probably about 5 minutes up the road.
Nice.
From Wembley, yeah. We've been here since 2015. Obviously, it is quite a small space now, as the whiskey's growing. She's growing. She's aging and she's growing. So we are looking into moving her into a bigger premises, but still in Park Royal at some point or another. And everything that happens as a single malt distillery should have under one roof.
Amazing.
So if I could hold on, let me see if I can switch this over.
This is great. I don't think we've ever had. Well, to my
I
knowledge,
will give you my back camera. So here we are. We've got a little photo shoot going on, but don't worry about that. But we've got two beautiful alembic stills. This one's brand new. She's not plugged in yet. And then we've got our 1,000-liter.
They're lovely.
Yes, that's our spirit still. This is our wash still. Long fermentation. Obviously, over there in the back, you can see the fermenters. Jesus, I'm sorry. So sorry. So much Christmassy noise stuff going on. Wait, hold on. There we go. Our fermenters, wooden washbacks made out of American white oak, so not typical. Usually you would have Douglas fir or pine wood. Thank you very much. But we are using. Oh, thank you. Fantastic. Thank you. We are using American white oak and long fermentation, which means 168 hours. So generally, you're looking at a fermentation for 48 to 96 hours. We are pushing her to 168. 2 distillations, 2 beautiful pot stills. She's not plugged in yet, so we're not sure. I'm not really sure how she's going to go. And then we've got a little alembic still here, which is Astra. Yeah, I'm not sure how she works yet because we haven't plugged her in. So there we are. But we have been cooking on her for the last couple of months.
Oh, okay. So it's not like they're waiting in the wings.
She's waiting to be commissioned. She is waiting to jump on board. it all takes time.
Yeah.
And obviously Darius is up in Scotland right now doing a little project up there, so
Very
here we
exciting.
are.
Before we get on to the whiskey, I'd love to know a bit about you and how you know, how long you've been with Bimber.
So I've been with Bimber for, oh my gosh, since 2018.
Oh,
it's
wow.
5 years now. Yeah, it's about 5 years now. My background, I'm a dental technician by background, but I have worked in London's hospitality for the last 15 years, doing high-end Mayfair clubs, Chelsea clubs, and like that. Obviously, at some point or another, it is a young man's game, so I wanted to transition to daytime work. And I sent out my CV to 2 companies which I adore. One was Plantation Rum, and the other one was Bimber.
Oh, wow. I mean,
and Plantation Rum said, Plantation Rum said, we love you. You got a great CV. Unfortunately, you've got no sales experience. And Bimber said, come on in. Here we are.
Oh,
so
really?
when I met Darius, he was like, what do you drink? I'm like, rum. He goes, by the time I'm done with you, you'll be a single malt man. And that is one word he definitely kept. So here we are.
That's amazing. I mean, similar, not in the way that I had anything to do with dental work, but when I started, I've also been at Master of Malt for 5 years, and I think most of the experience I'd had with drinking whiskey was stealing Jack Daniels and mixing it with Pimm's from my parents' cupboard. So I was like not a fan, and here we both are.
Here we are. There, exactly. Good times.
That's great. Bimber, well, not took a chance on you, but now we're all here. It's really interesting about the setup at Bimber, but also what's quite interesting is the dram that we have today, which is and I think it's 12 in Roman numerals.
The Apogee 12.
Yes, X is 10.
Right. The old versions of it. Yes. So the new version of.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
The new version is basically an Apogee 12.
Mm-hmm.
We did have to rebrand because a lot of people got it mixed up with kind of Japanesey markings, or some people can't read Roman numerals. I mean, times have changed nowadays, so we did have to bring out that 12-year-old distinctively onto the bottle. So it has been through a little rebrand, but it's not a Bimber, it's by Bimber.
Yes,
it's something for us to showcase.
Talk me through that.
Say again?
I'd love you to talk me through that, because obviously
yes,
but it's not.
So
Bimber
obviously Bimber, we're currently producing about 50,000 liters a year, which is minuscule. It's a tiny amount, and obviously to share that love, Darius thought to himself, why not do an attempt at blending? So with Apogee 12, we've brought in 3 distilleries. Now, unfortunately, I can't name them because I don't even know them. He won't tell me. It's a state secret.
Oh, wow.
But what I know is 2 are Speyside and 1 is international. All the whiskies that come into us are 12-year-olds. We blend them down to Darius' specifications, and then we put that blend back into our ex-bourbon casks for an unlimited period of time until they get that nice little zing, that little spiciness to them at the end, which is that signature Bimber flavor, which we all know and love. So it's just a little bit more whiskey brought to you guys, from us to you guys, by us.
Yeah, so more whiskey without, before you upsize, it's giving you more volume without having to distill more whiskey, which is really cool.
Hold on. Here we go. Yeah, you can say again, please.
I was just saying how, I guess it's your way at Bimber of bringing us more whiskey while you can't actually increase your capacity yet, because you were saying you're sort of looking to upsize.
We are looking to upsize. Obviously, we are currently producing 50,000 liters, but we will be bringing her up to 100,000 liters within the next year or so. She will be still kept at Park Royal. However, we need a bigger warehouse. We need a warehouse 4 times the size of what we've got right now. So, yeah, it is a journey, but we want to make a little bit more Bimber, obviously, and want to keep the people happy. Apogee is she's just a little dot on the I, to be honest. She's a little addition that we brought in, and we thought, let's try it, see what happens. At 46.3 ABV, that peaking little stage of ABVs, I mean, she makes a fabulous old-fashioned. Beautiful mixing dram. Even if it's not a mixing dram, it's your everyday kind of style dram.
Yeah,
perfectly rounded, very fruit forward, very apples and pears. A lot of fruitiness, a lot of kind of flower notes coming through her. Very lightly, very gentle, but she's got a distinctive kind of spice at the end. which is
a lot of the notes we're getting through from our members is all sort of about like, I mean, maybe it's because it's this time of year, but a lot of it's like Christmas cake, Christmas pudding. Yes. I think all the spices are really coming through.
Light fruity, but still manages to touch those little secret spots.
Yeah, the spice really comes through on the end, I think. So it's like the last impression you're left with.
Yeah.
But we've got, Joe F says it smells like Christmas pudding. You've got loads of raisins in there.
Thank you.
Malcolm Tucker, ginger biscuits. They're also of these notes. I love it. Jim Glancy.
Fantastic.
You set fire to it, which I love. And everyone's saying that sounds like a party where you're at.
I've got a tandem tour running above me, so the background noise you hear, that is another tour. Here we are. It's a busy day. It's Christmas. It's busy. It's a busy week.
Yes, exactly. So the casks that this is sort of like married and finished in, are those ex-Bimber casks? Or
those are ex-Bimber, ex-bourbons.
Cool.
So we've aged our ex-bourbons in them for a minimum of obviously 3 years. Usually they get drained around 4.5 year mark, depending on how good they are. And then we will use them again for about 9 to 11 month finish for the Apogee.
Okay, very nice. And is this going to be like an ongoing release, or do you think it's sort of like...
It will be ongoing. There will be variations of it. So obviously we have the standard ex-bourbon right here, but we are planning to do variations with sherry casks, with virgin casks, depending on what's available. We'll see what I don't find out much. Darius keeps it quite a state secret. He doesn't tell me much, but 48 hours before the release, he goes, "This is it. Off you go."
And you've been there since 2018. It's like, you can tell me now.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I wish he still doesn't.
So what kind of casks generally do you work with?
So
as well.
80% of our casks are ex-bourbons. First fills ex-bourbons, coming from generally 90% of the ex-bourbons come from Woodford Reserves, and the backups are Buffalo Trace and Knob Creek. So very, very high-end bourbons. And then we do sherries in pretty much 8 flavors. So anything from the PX, Oloroso, Moscatel, Polo Cortado Fino, Amontillado, Marazena, and Marazala.
Wow.
We're small, we're experimental, so we've got some mezcal casks coming in. I've got a Mizunara, I've got a couple of Foursquares. We're playing about. We're looking at.
Is that
yes. Oh my god, she's fantastic.
Have you seen a release with those used yet, or is that something?
We have done it for the club bottling, so we have done a ex-bourbon finished off in a Foursquare rum cask at 51.2, I believe she comes out. Fruit forward, hints of ex-bourbon, just rumminess, just overall rumminess. Beautiful, beautiful dram.
That sounds amazing. So it sounds like Bimber works with like almost every cask. Is that a particular, how would you describe the spirit itself? It seems to be
the spirit itself, the DNA itself is very fruit forward. She's light and fruit forward, but because we use first fill casks, they kind of complement each other. Always that cask will fulfill her, but the new make itself is fantastic. We do bottle it, we do sell it, and I take it home and I make margaritas on it. I'm not going to lie. I do make margaritas on the new make. It's that good.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yes, it's fantastic. So the spirit itself, the DNA is beautiful. Darius spent about a year's time designing it. This was not just an accident. It just did not pop out. He actually put in the time, put in the effort, distillation after distillation, using different sugar levels, different stills, different heat sources. Obviously, our stills are direct fire. One of, I think, 5 distilleries in the world that still use that kind of use that process.
What's the reason behind that? Sorry, with the direct fire.
Say again.
Sorry, what's the reasoning behind being one of the?
So the direct fire. Well, we're not just steaming her up. We're not just boiling her up. We are charring the sugars inside the still. We are caramelizing that sugar inside the still, which produces a 4th character, which a steam operated still will never be able to find.
So it's kind of like cooking versus like grilling.
It's kind of like cooking steak. You can cook a steak on a regular pan, and it's going to be lovely, tender, and juicy, and medium rare, or however you like it. But if you put it on a griddled pan, you get those extra charring notes, which we are basically effectively sourcing from our stills.
Just by caramelizing. That was something that happened in direct fired stills. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
As much as we can bring her back down to the roots, that's what we try to do. We're not.
You've been mentioning Darius as well. So he is the Bimber. It'd be great just to hear sort of a bit of history behind that as well, and how he came to open the distillery.
Well, Darius obviously is an entrepreneur. He has a construction company. He's got a cooperage. He does all that. So anything I need to be made for the distillery, I'll order it in-house, from tables, chairs, furniture, fermenters, whatever I need. It's all done in-house. His background is architecture and design. However, he's a third-generation moonshiner. So he was taught by his grandfather and his father. So from the age of 7, he has been distilling. And pretty much by the end of high school, he has been graduating. So this is purely a passion project. This is purely a passion project for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, it's in his blood, isn't it?
It's in his blood, yeah. It's in his blood. And I think it shows quality over quantity.
Yeah. So is this the first time you've been looking to like increase capacity since it was?
Yes.
Okay,
exactly so that. Obviously, Bimber sells out in seconds. It's a good problem to have. We would like to share that problem with everybody else. We would like to have more Bimber available for everybody else. But because we're small, because it's only 50,000 liters a year, we needed to find another source of getting that Bimber out there. So she's not currently a Bimber, but she's by Bimber, if that makes sense. And just a little bit more love. It's just a bit more whiskey love to share.
Yeah, I love that. Diversified. I mean, blending is no mean feat. So
yeah.
I think that's really cool. Well, listen, thank you so much. I feel like that was absolutely whistle-stop tour, and I'm so glad we got to see the distillery as well.
Oh, pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
I know it sounds like you're quite busy, but yeah, if you'd like to stay around to the end for another dram and a cheers, then that would be lovely. But I understand if you have to rush off.
I will do. I'm going to mute myself off. I'm going to join the other tour, but I will be online.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was such
Thank you so much.
I think Andy's in control now, so we're just hoping he's around.
Thank you very much for that, Luke. I think now everybody who comes to Porto is going to have to do that for us.
Not a problem.
This is
always
so
happy to do it. Very happy.
Thank you very much, Luke. Cheers.
You're welcome.
Well, yeah, I think that's set a new precedent for everybody.
Yeah, Christmas party, Christmas tour. Love
Christmas
it.
tours with distilleries, yeah. Awesome. Well, whistle stop tour, lovely whiskey. Should we move on to the next one?
Yes, bang.
Goodbye again, Jess.
See ya.
Barely spent any time together. Right, we are flying past with all these whiskies. As always, please do drink them at your own pace. Do not feel like you have to finish these all whilst before the interview finishes. If you want to save a little bit for later, which is something I do, please do. I will invite Annabel onto the screen.
Hello. Is it going? Good.
Yes. How are you?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
Very, very well. Thank you very much. Very, very well. Better now. I've had a couple of drams of amazing whiskey. That
always.
Absolutely always helps. And you have been on with us before. Maybe it was a long time ago though, right? I think
nearly maybe in COVID-y times, yeah.
It may have been COVID-y times, yes. Do not miss those days. But anyway, just for anyone who doesn't know, talk to us a little bit about yourself. I know you started, but just talk to us about yourself and how that kind of venture came about.
Great. So, yeah, I am the founder of Nc'nean. I have been working on it for over 10 years, which is quite terrifying. So the inspiration for Nc'nean really came from two places. The first is literally the place. It's on my parents' farm on the far, far northwest coast of Scotland. It is really super remote and hard to get to. And the other, and you can't really be on the west coast and not think about whiskey. So we'd had this kind of family dream that we might start a distillery there. But the other one, which is much more important for kind of what Nc'nean has become, was I went on a trip to some whiskey distilleries. This is more than 10 years ago now, to kind of figure out what the lie of the land was and see whether, this idea that we'd had might be a viable one. And as I went around the distilleries back then, I really felt like there wasn't enough focus on things like sustainability in the industry. And that was something that was super close to my heart. And I just felt it was really important for the industry to get going on that, because consumers now think it's really important. So that was really where this kind of family dream became something that I felt like I needed to do. Mm-hmm. And fast forward a few months, I ended up leaving my old job, which was a strategy consultant in London, to do something totally different and start Nc'nean.
Was it a good choice?
It was an excellent choice. Although the first 2 years, I don't miss them, and I wouldn't do them again.
Okay, so there were some times where you definitely doubted that decision. You're like,
yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I can understand that. It's obviously quite a big undertaking. So you mentioned about sustainability, and obviously it's something that's always going to be brought up when we're talking about Nc'nean now, but that's a good thing. And at the time when you were talking about it, it wasn't exactly a prominent thing in the whiskey industry that people were talking about this. But how does it translate into your whiskey production?
Well, we take a very holistic approach to sustainability, and we have tried to think about it in totality. So it's not just about energy source, it's not just about raw materials, it's not just about people. We try to look at it all. But the three most important things to know are that everything that we make is organic. So you will see organic written on the front of every bottle from us. And that means that we source our barley from organic certified farms. So instead of conventional farms where they use pesticides and fertilizers, we source from organic certified farms. And we can come back and talk about the taste impact of that maybe in a bit. The second is that the whole distillery is powered by renewable energy. So we use a biomass boiler, which is because we are, as I mentioned, really in the middle of nowhere, more than an hour's driving on single track roads. And we have a commercial farm a commercial forest just next to the farm. So it makes total sense for us to use biomass. And the third is that our bottles, and you can see this better on our standard bottle, especially an empty one, are made of 100% recycled glass. And that is important. So you can see there's a kind of green tinge. That's because it's recycled, not completely pure. That saves 40% of the carbon emissions of every bottle run, because it's easier to melt glass into glass than it is sand into glass. So those are the three most important things. But we are also B Corp certified. We've got the highest score for an F&B, food and drink brand in the UK. Creating employment in this remote area is also a really important part of what we do, and we sweat it all the way down to the small stuff, what the cork's made of, what the label's made of, what coffee we buy for our visitors, etc.
Okay, and what do you need to be certified in this way?
As a B Corp?
Yeah.
Well, so this is a kind of emerging certification, I would say. It started in the US. And the idea of it, which I really like, is it's like an organic certification, but it's for the whole business. So the principle is using business as a force for good. And it's a certification that assures consumers that business is doing the right things in terms of its people, its governance, its environmental impact. So the kind of, carbon emissions and that sort of stuff. And also thinking about where its suppliers are based and what they're doing. And it's a really very challenging certification, accreditation process. You have to go through absolutely millions of questions, provide loads of evidence. And if you score above 80, you can be certified a B Corp.
Is there any other distilleries that
are? In Scotland, Bruichladdich are also certified. Good question. Outside of Scotland, definitely, but I can't.
But in Scotland, only Bruichladdich?
In Scotland, only Bruichladdich, yeah.
Do you think the whiskey industry, this is a weird question, but I wasn't planning on asking this, but do you think the whiskey industry in general is doing enough when talking about sustainability, or do you think some of it is sometimes a little bit for show and obviously for profit now, because as the more it becomes a fashionable term to use? Just a general question. What do you think, honestly?
I think I don't feel like there's too much for show. Which is good. It's really positive. And I think that's in contrast to some other industries. It's not that there's none for show. There are some that's like, it's just a beehive. Yeah. It's really not saving the world. Yeah. But in general, I think it's not just for show. I think the industry could always be doing more, but I also think that compared to other non-whiskey industries, take fashion, it's also way ahead. So swings and roundabouts, I would say. I mean, I always think that everyone could be doing more, and we're also still on that journey. We're by no means perfect. We have got loads of stuff we still need to work on. Sure. But at least the industry is moving in the right direction, and there is some really, there's some really cool stuff going on. So that's
absolutely, totally. I completely agree with that. But what was your vision for Nc'nean? So the distillery character, the style of spirit, and obviously, did it change at all once you'd started production?
I wanted to create something light and fruity that also stood up really well to mixing with soda, which we can maybe also talk about in a bit. But I love that light and fruity style. I also want to open whiskey up to kind of anyone who's interested in it. I feel like maybe Scotch got a bit stuck in the 80s, putting up barriers to people drinking it, this image of who must drink it, where they must drink it, you must drink it neat, all of this kind of rubbish. And so I wanted to make something light and fruity that's just delicious, no kind of heavy peat that can be quite difficult as a newcomer. And I think that's what we've achieved. I think the other thing that I maybe couldn't have specified at the beginning, but we've achieved with the organic barley that I mentioned earlier, is this lovely texture and mouthfeel. So it's got a real buttery oiliness to it, which comes from the organic barley. So I always say an organic carrot is more carroty than a normal carrot, and the same goes for our barley. It's got lots more goodness in it, and you get this kind of lovely texture through. And the other thing is that means it stands up really well to dilution. It makes an excellent whiskey with soda water, which is an age-old classic that I feel not enough people are drinking.
Absolutely. Is there any particular Nc'nean that goes really well with in a highball?
Definitely, I would say the classic Nc'nean flagship. That's the wrong way around. This is the one that is the best with a highball. The one that we're drinking tonight will also make an excellent highball, although I think it's also really interesting to drink neat.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a good time to get on there. But I just wanted to also quickly ask you about experimenting with like barley varietals as well. But you've been experimenting a lot with yeast. Can you talk to us about that kind of experiment?
Yeah, we have. And I guess the background to that is that I am super fascinated by the spirit side of whiskey. There has been a lot of work done on aging and barrels, and especially when you're producing an old whiskey, the barrels are obviously essential, but we are producing a younger whiskey and the spirit therefore shines through much more. And I just think the intricacies of how you can tweak that spirit are really cool. And one of the biggest ways is through changing the yeast. And so we have this big focus on fermentation. We ferment for a super long time, up to 114 hours. And for our normal whiskey and the one we're drinking tonight, we use 2 yeasts called Anchor and Fermentis. But during the year, we also run yeast trials and a totally different spirit recipe as well. So we have all sorts of spirits coming out of the distillery, which makes for super interesting spirit maturing in the cask.
Sure.
And the yeast experiments, we take yeast that might have been designed for tequila or beer or wine and add that into the 2 existing yeasts that we use, which just creates really interesting different flavors.
Okay, that sounds awesome. I'd like to be in your kind of your experimentation sessions to be trying all that.
They're really fun. Well, not always fun, because some of them are disgusting, by the way, so you have to take the rest of the
That's still fun, let's be honest. So yeah, let's talk about this dram that we're drinking tonight. I'm already getting some Christmas notes from this one. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's really Christmassy.
In the spirit.
So this is Quiet Rebels Gordon. It comes in this lovely blue bottle, which is what our special editions come in. And it is the 3rd release in our Quiet Rebels series. Quiet Rebels is all about celebrating our team. And we release them every October. And you get your Quiet Rebels in the order that you join the company. So this one is Gordon's. He's our distillery manager. He was our 3rd team member. And about a year in advance of the release, Matt, who's our blender, sits down with the person whose release it's going to be and tries to figure out what they love in a whiskey. And he then uses the barrels that we've already got in the warehouse and finishing casks to bring in, if he wants to create something from the Nc'nean warehouse that is as close to, whatever they like as possible. So Gordon really loves, his description of it is tasty, but or something that leaves the mouth wanting more. And he really loves like a kind of rich, fruity whiskey, basically. So what we have in here is the classic Nc'nean spirit. So there isn't any change from the spirit between our flagship and this, but it is a real change in cask mix. So it is nearly 3/4 STR red wine casks, and we talked about STR red wine casks earlier, so I won't go into what they are. Nearly 20% sherry butts, and 7% something called a reef salt, or if you're French, rissolt, which is a French sweet wine, basically. Okay. So it's much richer than our normal whiskey, which has ex-bourbon casks in it as well. And that's where all those lovely Christmassy notes come from.
Yeah. Getting those kind of like lovely kind of spicy cinnamon notes, orange peel in there.
Orange peel, exactly.
It's absolutely wonderful. I think, cheers. I'm going to have a drink of this one because it smells.
So
Cheers, everybody. Lovely. And you're saying about the mouthfeel, this has absolutely got that wonderful creamy peach note as well. Maybe.
Yes, exactly. Well, peach is that we get that classic peach note across all of our whiskies. It comes straight out the spirit, and that's part of what I wanted to create with that light and fruity taste profile, is that the fruit in the spirit really pops.
Wonderful chocolatey, that kind of orangey marmalade chocolate kind of terries maybe kind of vibe. It's absolutely wonderful. There are loads of notes coming in on this one, so I'm going to start reading them because I've missed everything because we've been chatting. Steve Cromwell Williams, first thing about Nc'nean, the bottles are wonderfully beautiful. Never had a bottle like it. I think it's something we get quite a lot. They are beautiful bottles. Joe F, I've got vanilla, peach, and mulled wine on the nose with this Nc'nean. Stuart McGregor, first Nc'nean for me, smells amazing, floral, Parma violets, and sandalwood. That's a good question, Steve. I will ask that to Annabel after we've done the tasting notes.
Tasting notes.
Sorry, I will forget though. Malcolm Tucker, Nc'nean Organic was September 2021. That's what we did for the first time on Pour and Sip.
Oh, great.
There you go. So yeah.
There we go.
So there's always someone who remembers, and I'm sure
love it.
We probably all got a highball recommendation for that one. I'm sure you tried that in a highball. Again, were you saying that this would go well in the highball for you?
It would, but I probably wouldn't put it in the highball because I really love that kind of richness that you get when you drink it neat. So if I was reaching for a highball, I'd probably just reach for our flagship.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Gordon has got similar taste to me because I love this kind of style of whiskey. It's wonderful, but I think it's definitely getting towards the spirit and the Christmas trees up and stuff like that. Those Christmas notes are coming through, and it's absolutely wonderful. Neil Bolton, milk chocolate undertone. Anyone? Chris Randall on the nose. I get warm pear drops wrapped in leather pouch. I'm just going to say Peter Gilmore, orange and cinnamon or faint fruity. Steve Cromwell Williams getting tones of fresh mocha. Anthony Mullins, I'm getting a big slice of Manor House cake. I don't know what that is.
I don't know what Manor House cake is.
This is
Google.
one. Yeah, I don't know what that is either. It's apparently from Mr. Kipling.
Okay.
Stuart McGregor, finishes citrus, spice, pepper all together. Lovely. Chris Dagnan, ooh, this is lush. That's a great tasting note, let's be honest. Ooh, this is lush.
Which basically is what Gordon would say. That is actually his tasting note. So spot on. Tasty, tasty. Exactly.
Tasty, it's the same thing. Real Bongo, the taste is as is. If you poured honey generously over the spicy fruitcake, and the honey lingers with candied orange peel as a finish. There you go, that's a specific one. Very good. Malcolm Tucker, Nc'nean palate, Jaffa cakes. Agree with the oily feel. Don't know if this is playing tricks on my mind, as I thought I tasted a hint of mackerel, finished with mixed spice and blackberry. There you go. Have you had mackerel before on this one?
No, that is totally new.
This is what we love about Pour and Sip, and all the guests love about Pour and Sip. You get stuff you've not heard before. Jeremy Anson, was it Nc'nean that first recommended Nc'nean soda water with cucumber summer last Pour and Sip a couple of years back?
Definitely, I would recommend it with soda water. We'd normally garnish it with mint, but I see no problem with cucumber.
Okay, and yeah, there you go. So no, I mean this is absolutely wonderful. So I suppose when you're doing this series, you have no idea kind of what you're going to be making until you know what that person has told you.
Exactly. So it always starts like a year in advance. It doesn't. We can start it earlier because obviously we know who's going to be next. And with our next one, for example, we have there's some very specific barrel requirements, which we did kind of start sourcing in advance just to make sure we could get them. But yeah, that's part of the fun of it. It truly reflects the person. It's not, apart from being made from only Nc'nean spirit, it's them, not Nc'nean, which I love.
Sure. Have you had one?
Yeah, mine was the first, obviously.
Of course. Can we see bottles of that?
Say again.
Has that still got bottles available of that one?
Oh, no. There's one there.
There you go.
But no, so that was in Tokai casks. And then Lorna, who was our first ever employee and helped me with the build process and then trained to become one of our distillers, was the second, and now Gordon.
Sure. Okay. Well, I look forward to the next one. I'm just going to ask that question because I've remembered it's come back from Steve Coleman Williams. Given the sustainability angle, would you ever do a peated whiskey? Flocky, I think that's a...
Norwegian or something. Yeah, I know them. Yeah,
with dung rather than peat. Is that an option?
All good questions. So on the peated piece, the answer is no. We will never use peat but two reasons. One is it's definitely not sustainable, so it doesn't even get a look in past that point. But as I was saying, we're also keen to, bring new people into the category, and think peat goes against that. But, you could say, you can do a special and just people who love peat can drink it. But no, we would not do it for sustainability reasons. We have wondered about smoking it with something else. Definitely not dung. But something like, heather or something else that's kind of local and around us. So that is on the list of really cool things to do that we haven't got around to yet.
What else is on that list though of cool things to do that are kind of cool?
Wild yeast.
Okay.
But I suggested that to Gordon, and he looked at me like I'd suggested that he swim to Norway or something equally ridiculous. It's like, I've got enough problems running a distillery in this place without needing to produce my own yeast, which I have no idea about.
Yeah, no, that does sound fun though.
I know.
Yeah.
That would be higher on my list than the smoked barley, but we'll see where we get to first.
Sure. And lastly, it's been a journey so far, like you said, but what's been your favourite memory or moment of your journey so far in the Nc'nean journey?
That's really hard. I mean, the obvious one was releasing our first whiskey. Just seeing the product in a bottle was pretty amazing, because by that point I'd been working on it for 7 years. We then auctioned the first 10 bottles for charity, and the first one went for £41,000. So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I think kind of bigger picture, I think seeing the impact we're able to have on the broader industry in terms of sustainability is probably the thing that in the long term I'm most proud of, because compared to the big giants of the industry, we're tiny. But if we can enhance our own impact by getting everyone else to move faster, then that will be an amazing thing to have achieved.
Absolutely. Wonderfully said. Just apparently here, Chris Declan saying that Stauning in Denmark use heather to smoke.
Oh, they do. Yes, I think I knew that. I need to ask them about it.
Yes, we've had them. They've been on numerous times as well. Important, so there's everyone now apparently. But anyway, thank you so much, Annabel, for chatting through all of that with us. That's an absolutely wonderful. Congratulations, Gordon. That's wonderful.
I'll pass it on.
Pass it on. And was he happy with it actually?
He was. Yeah. He was.
He wouldn't say otherwise, though, would he?
No, but he's also involved in the blending process at the end. Okay. So you brief at the beginning and then blending.
Okay, cool. It's not a brief and then it's surprise. Here's your whiskey.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, thank you very much. If you want to stick around to the end, please do. If you have to go, feel free. But lovely to chat with you again. To have you on again soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers, Annabel. Wow. That's 3 down, guys. We are absolutely racing through tonight. Amazing guests and amazing whiskey. Jess, I didn't give you any pre-warning whatsoever about
always ready.
How is that for you? Did you enjoy that?
Oh, so great. I just love everything about Nc'nean, and it's great to hear how it's actually pronounced from the horse's mouth, aka Annabel.
So without further ado, I think we should move on, and we are going to go to someone who's been on Pour and Sip more than both of us, is David. So please welcome back, David. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. Lovely to see you again. It is as ever a pleasure to be here.
Okay, I can't remember what we were talking about last time in the Edrington profile.
I think it might have been Lefroy or possibly
no, Lefroy was Chris. I can't remember. I think it was Japanese. I can't remember.
Yes, I think you're right. Yes, it was been Hakushu, Yamazaki, and Hibiki.
It was. Yeah. There we go. Got it. Well, anyway, tonight we are talking about Highland Park, the 4th release of the cask strength. And again, I think we had the first release of this on Pour and Sip.
And now we're on the 4th release. So we are on a journey, and it is becoming a very, very interesting little, I'm going to say, a sideline that the distillery is producing here.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to hearing all about that. I will leave you in the capable hands of Jess. I will see you all soon. Cheers.
Forward to it.
Wonderful. This is great, because as many times as you've been on here, I don't think I've ever been on a live tasting with you. So there's a first time for everything.
No, this is the first time. And, as I said earlier, what's great about this is that with apologies to your members who have heard me before, it's a different whiskey, but my jokes remain the same. But you haven't heard them. So this is, of course, no guarantee that they're funny in any way, but, at least I can try.
But I can guarantee my laugh will be genuine and not rehearsed. No, amazing. I mean, I'm sure there's many people who have not seen you before, though, as much as we have a lot of, members who join every month. So it would be great to have a bit of background, about you before we get into the whiskey.
Of course. So, and I think, almost just with that introduction, we dropped enough hints there. Yeah. But I've worked across quite a lot of whiskies. I work for Edrington, UK, who own Macallan, Highland Park, the Glenrothes, but who also do all the distribution and sales marketing for all the Beam Suntory whiskies. So the Suntory side of that is Yamazaki and Hibiki and Hakushu and Toki. The Beam side is Maker's Mark, which, tying in with Annabel, there's outside of the UK, there's a B Corp distillery in the States. Maker's Mark has got B Corp accreditation, but it's got all the Jim Beam bourbons and therefore the small batch bourbons. So Knob Creek, Booker's, Baker's, Basil Hayden, and also owns Scotch distilleries, Bowmore, Lefroy, Auchentoshan, Glengarry, Ardmore. So I am truly one of the really lucky people in life because my job is never, ever boring.
Yeah.
I'm always talking about different whiskies with different people in different places, which keeps things very, very interesting. But Highland Park is always going to be, I've got a soft spot for Highland Park. And on the one hand, I know you'd expect me to say that as that's what we've got, but it's such a remarkable distillery. It's the northernmost distillery in the country. Well, certainly the northernmost whiskey distillery at the moment. I think there's a new distillery opening in Orkney, which might be about 200 yards further north than us, but I'm not sure how we're going to.
Well, you've probably got a while until that's,
I might be raising an eyebrow at that one. Let me tell you, they wouldn't want that.
Oh, so Highland Park's your secret. I mean, we don't want to call it a favourite, but
and it's a bit like choosing between your children in many ways. But there is, so much history behind Highland Park. The geography. There's so much that makes it a very distinctive individual distillery as well. And they produce whiskey. I've tried to avoid using the term entry level this year, and I've failed dismally. It's a horrible phrase. This is our entry level whiskey. Our baseline, our 10-year-old, our 12-year-old are, kind of like great whiskies. And this is a year when we've launched a 54-year-old whiskey, the oldest whiskey that we've ever produced. Wow. I'm lucky enough, if I sort of move my head slightly that way, you might just see behind me some
locked in a safe.
There's some empty. I haven't got the 54 there, unfortunately. But there's a 40-year-old Highland Park behind me. There's a 25-year-old Highland Park behind me. It is a great time to be involved with the distillery.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those distilleries that I think has an incredibly strong story and branding, and it doesn't look like a lot of other Scotch whiskies either, which I think really helps it stand out as much as the whiskey inside does as well.
No, absolutely. And again, actually, and I'm not sure how much I should be saying this, but I'm going to anyway because I had a little sip or two of whiskey. Well, next year is going to be a very exciting year for Highland Park. The bottles they're going to evolve. The positioning of the whiskey, the feel, the look, the brand. We are proudly Orcadian. We will always be proudly Orcadian. We might not quite be so Viking focused.
Okay.
We have been going forward. We are going to be looking at some of the other Orcadian influences on the whiskey, from the culture, the history, from the environment of the Orkney Islands. Okay. So Highland Park is going to be a very, very exciting whiskey to be involved with and to be part of going forward. Highland Park are going to be making some very, very interesting whiskies as well. one of the other things that's happening next year is the distillery is actually closing for a few months.
Oh, really?
There is a big refurb happening, and it's tied in. We haven't had a refurb for quite a few years. We need one. Some of our guests will know. A couple of years ago at Highland Park, we've got our stills on one side of the road, and the filling room is on the other side of the road.
I didn't know that.
And the pipe that takes all the new make spirit from the stills across to the filling room goes up above the road. It's up on high, but it wasn't quite high enough when somebody decided to drive a lorry with an extendable ladder along the road and forgot to take the ladder down, and the ladder took out our pipe taking whiskey or taking spirit across the road to the casks.
That sounds like it was like a whiskey heist that went really wrong or something.
It was like whiskey galore being remade by a teenage film student who shouldn't have been let near it. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, yeah, that's the hard way to learn that lesson, isn't it?
Part of the refurb, I believe, is going to be a far more secure method of getting spirit from one side of the road.
Was the road like? Did the road come after the distillery? Was it sort of?
The distillery. Well, the road was there already. One of the reasons, we built the distillery, but as the distillery expanded slightly, and we needed, so we couldn't expand one way, and we expanded the other way, and for most of our existence on both sides of the road, it has not been a problem. It just needed one driver and one forgetful moment to
an oversized lorry
rain chaos down upon us.
We laugh now, but I'm sure it was heartbreaking at the time.
So at least with the closure next year, we know it's happening. We're planning for it. We're laying down the stock in advance so that we can cope with it. This was the other one was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, that's really going to be, I mean, when you get any building work done, and you always have to double the amount of time that they tell you it's going to be. But this time you're going to be like, no, you really have to stick to this timeline.
It's right. And what I've really enjoyed about listening to, Annabel and all the other guests is I've been okay. Oh no, that ties in with what we do. Oh yeah, that ties in with what we do. We like, and the world of whiskey. All of these distilleries being so creative, producing such wonderful whiskey in such wonderful ways. But we can link it all together as well. So Bimber with their direct heat stills and talking about, you get a Maillard reaction in the still there. So you're going to get like a more interesting new make spirit. Now, I was up at the Highland Park distillery in January, and a number of members of the Stillhouse team weren't there, because they were visiting the Glengarry distillery, which last year went through a big refurb. And one of the things they did at Glengarry was reintroduce direct heat in the wash still. And for two reasons, which and then also then ties in with what Annabel was saying about Nc'nean. In terms of sustainability, direct heat's a more efficient source of power. So you're trying to reduce your carbon emissions, that's going to work. And you're going to get, you hope, a more interesting new make spirit being created, because you've got direct heat on copper, you've got the lees, you've got various little bits of solid matter in your distiller's beer. This is going to create a more interesting flavour. Now, I am not saying, and I do not know, and actually I do not think that Highland Park are going to go back to a direct heat source, although I don't rule it out completely.
Never say never.
I do know that the guys from Highland Park went to Glengarry to look to see what was happening there and why it worked and what the advantages were. It all pulls together here. I absolutely accept, would fully support everything Annabel was saying about never doing a peated whiskey. We are a partially peated whiskey, so we can't stop being a peated whiskey without totally changing the character of Highland Park. What we can do is try to be as efficient, as sustainable, as aware as possible with the peat that we're using at Highland Park. And I think one of the reflections of that, we are a partially peated whiskey. We only peat a proportion of all the barley that we use, but we also do have our own floor maltings at the distillery. So all the peated barley that we use, we peat ourselves, and the peat is dug a few miles away from the distillery on Hobbister Moor. Hobbister Moor is an RSPB reserve.
Okay.
You know, the RSPB are not going to let us dig peat if we are not being, you know, as sustainable as possible. So yeah, we are a peated whiskey, a partially peated whiskey. We're going to keep being a peated whiskey. We are going to be as sustainable, as ecologically sound as we can be, giving a bit of allowance for that parameter that I've just set there.
I mean, yeah, no, you can't, you know, you can't work around that for a whiskey like Highland Park, can you? But
no, and it's, you know, yeah, the whiskey industry uses peat, but actually the whiskey industry uses a tiny percentage of all the peat that is dug. The gardening industry uses a lot, but is getting better, it has to be said. But a lot of peat was, you know, gets used in compost and stuff for the gardeners. But also one of the biggest users of peat, you know what you should give up if you want to really help sustainability with peat here?
I feel like it's going to be something that I would never guess.
Mushrooms.
No! Oh no!
Think of that, those little black bits you have to brush off your button mushrooms.
Oh, this is bad. Okay, well, I'm going to go and think about how many mushrooms I eat. But before that, I would love to like talk more about the Highland Park peat from sort of like a flavour side as well, because I think, you know, it is quite distinctive. And I mean, so are you the only distillery that uses Orkney peat?
Yes. So we have, you know, there's also Scarpa up on in the Orkney Islands, but we are the only peated Orcadian whiskey. And you know, peat, as we know, decomposed vegetation from a few thousand years ago. Because of where the Orkney Islands are, and this is where the environment of where we make our whiskey becomes so important. Basically, there's two huge weather systems that collide just off the north of Scotland. You've got the warmth of the South Atlantic drift coming one way, you've got the freezing cold of the Arctic coming the other way. Boom. And what this means is that the weather is actually, generally speaking, very predictable on Orkney.
Okay.
It rains.
Like Scotland.
It rains 370 days of the year, but the rain does not come down because the wind is blowing at about 40 miles an hour. So it's coming across like this. And the reason I'm talking about the weather is not just because I'm English and that is apparently contractually you're obliged to talk about weather when you're English. It's because what this means is that basically nothing grows tall in the Orkney Islands. We have very few, virtually no trees, no big bushes. The vegetation that grows on Orkney fundamentally is heather. We've actually got very fertile soil, but the moment things start to try to grow, the wind just knocks them over. So Orcadian peat is based on heather. Now, this is going to, when you burn this is going to give you a very different aroma in the smoke compared to mainland Scottish peat. You know, a couple of thousand years ago, mainland Scotland was pretty much covered by the Caledonian forest. So the Caledonian forest means that mainland peat's going to have a much woodier quality to it. Isla peat. So there are still quite a lot of trees on Isla. I mean, it gets battered by wind and rain, but not to the extent that the Orkneys do. But also a lot of the peat that we associate with that flavour that we get there, the peat bogs are really close to the coast. So the makeup of the peat there is a lot of seagrass, even seaweed, but a far more maritime note to it. The reason that whiskies like Lefroy have that medicinal, briny, iodine-y note to them, that peat is very different to mainland peat, is very different to Orcadian peat. Our peat has a much softer, we'll talk about the heather honey sweetness in Highland Park. And if you do have your glass in front of you,
please. I can't believe you haven't had a sip yet. Yeah, it's lovely. I don't think it sort of hits you in the face with smoke, as a lot of people might assume from like an island whiskey.
No, it's absolutely we only peat a certain proportion of the barley that we use. It's part of the equation. It's a part of the recipe. It's not dominant. I spend my life talking about these whiskies, and I love these whiskies. And I will be absolutely honest with you here. Something I can get a Highland Park, a 12-year-old or something, and I nose it, and I'm going, oh my God, I'm a total fraud because I can barely notice the smoke here. And apparently people pay me to do this for a job, and I can't do it. I taste it, and I get a little bit of my self-confidence back, because I think when you taste it, it's there in the equation. But it is never meant to be dominant.
Yeah,
it's part of the overall package that we put together.
Yeah, and I think, as well, this whiskey in particular, I find it fairly sweet, but I think that might also be to do with the cask recipe, because I think this is the first time that you used port casks.
Absolutely. So this is the fourth in our cask strength series. Yes. And so Highland Park is, we predominantly use sherry casks. We are part of the Edrington group. We are a sister distillery with the Macallan. There is a absolute dominance of old sherry casks being used at the distillery. But a lot of sherry casks are made from European oak. And European oak sherry casks are absolutely brilliant. European oak sherry casks, and they're going to give you that dried fruit. They're going to give you the richer spices, candied fruit peel. A lot of sherry casks are made from American oak, and this sometimes gets a little bit overlooked. But American oak shipped as timber from the USA to Jerez, made into casks, seasoned with Oloroso sherry, and that American oak is going to give you more vanilla. It's going to give you more citrus. It's going to give you like slightly fresher notes. Also in the cask makeup for this batch of the cask strength, there is a small amount of bourbon barrel being used here as well, which is not unheard of, but is unusual for Highland Park. We have done bourbon barrel releases. There is a bourbon barrel influence on some of our expressions, but it's never dominant. It's never been what we've been about. But it's here in this cask strength release, and because it's at cask strength, I think maybe that's like the coconut that could be there, the like some of the sweeter butterscotchy caramel notes that are part of the flavor that we get in this cask strength whiskey. That's because of this bourbon influence. And allegedly, apparently, for the first time, ladies and gentlemen, the first time,
drum roll,
cask influence, which is going to give you that slightly, richer,
jammy. I think it's
jammier, that wine influence coming through. It is, I think, an absolute testament, tribute to Gordon Motion, who is our master whiskey maker. It's always this balance of cask influence against distillery character.
Yeah.
The cask influence is too dominant, you lose the distillery character. In particular, given we have our own floor maltings, given the unusual nature of our location being so far north, being in the Orkney Islands, it would be a real shame if the distillery character was totally swamped by the cask.
Yeah, then it could be, you can get a cask and you can make any whiskey.
Absolutely. And I think even using this, range, this variety of different casks, which do undoubtedly contribute so much to the richness of the flavour. But that distillery character, that smoke note that's there, that sweet heather honey smoke note that's there, is absolutely present.
Yeah, I just have to read you some of these taste notes coming through because they are absolutely gorgeous. I mean, there's loads. I'm not going to be able to get through them all. But we've got Steve Colm Williams with lightly caramelized raspberry crumble, which I feel just like epitomizes the like butteriness of the oak with like the fruit from the cask. That is just lovely.
You know, that tasting note just says to me, American oak bourbon barrel, port cask. That's what's coming through. Yes.
Yeah, we got Malcolm Tucker with oak and peat smoke, and then clotted cream, vanilla ice cream. Quite a lot of citrus actually being thrown around in these.
So American oak influence coming in, I would suggest.
If I'm correct. I think we can trust you on that one. And someone, who was it? I've just lost it. Someone said that they would love to pair this with a swordfish steak. I don't know if you've had that one before. It was Steve Coleman Williams, actually.
You know what? I quite often struggle for good suggestions for whiskey pairings with food. And let's face it, I think we're all a bit bored of, do it with dark chocolate or do it with a bit of strong cheese. Swordfish steaks is the way forward. From now on, as ever, all my best ideas stolen from people who come up with better ideas than I've ever come up with. Swordfish steak, cask strength whiskey.
Yeah, and then we've got Ali C saying that they're always a fan of Highland Park with citrus oil, heather honey, vanilla, gentle peat smoke, and that's very easy drinking for 64.3%, which I would agree with. I think if you didn't see the ABV, you would never guess.
And actually, just one other thing, because that's touched on one of my other very scanty notes that I did write here, 64.3% ABV. And that's the majority of single malt whiskey, although it comes off the still at 69-70%. You know, most distilleries will cut with water to about 63% before going into the cask. So it's not too volatile, so the Angels don't go too crazy grabbing their share.
Yeah, they got none of this.
But a lot of Highland Park, we actually put into the cask at that 69-70% ABV that it comes off the still at. So there's no age statement on this, and I do not know. I could not tell you what the age of it is. Let's face it, given the range of different casks that we know have gone into it, they are almost definitely going to be quite a wide selection of different ages here. But just the fact that the casks for this, I'm pretty certain nearly all of them, I am guessing slightly, but go with me on this, will have been matured up in the Orkney Islands. We're building new warehouses, so more and more of our whiskey, nearly all the casks are now maturing in Orkney. We do talk about the cool maturation, because what this weather there means is that we actually get very little variation over the course of the year. Summers are never gets much above 15-16 degrees, but winter we very rarely get snow. Winter it still only drops to about 3 degrees,
and it would be sideways if you did.
Coming sideways. The barrel, do we turn our barrels? The wind just rotates them around. It blows through the warehouses. But because of that, the Angel share in Orkney is less than the rest of Scotland. And also because of that, so if it has gone into the cask at 69-70% ABV, we've lost about 5 to 6% of the alcohol. It's possibly a number of the casks here are going to be much older than you would maybe expect, given the ABV.
That's interesting.
We started at a higher ABV than is feasible for a lot of other distilleries.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's also, now I feel as if it wasn't delicious enough already. Now I feel like I've got a little extra zhuzh in there.
And zhuzh is always good, isn't it? We like zhuzh.
Gonna write that on my next tasting note. Well, listen, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, but somehow I've gone way over time with you. But yeah, thank you so much. That was so interesting. I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say we can't wait to have you on again.
It's always a pleasure, just always an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, and please forgive me for talking too much.
No, never. That is why you're here.
Thank you very much, David. Cheers. See you in a bit. Right. Well, what a tasting session.
I know, and we're rounding it off with a real puncher. in the best way.
Oh yeah, we were never going to start with this one, so
we were trying to earlier.
I was, but that's because I misread. I just, just saw a list of whiskies, and I thought, okay, that's the order. I never questioned anything. I did think, oh, that might be a strange one to start with, but I didn't question it. Right, I'm going to invite Iain onto the screen. Hello, Iain. Jess, say goodbye for now. Is that your real middle name, Iain? Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Now I can hear
okay, you. All right, okay. I was listening to all those legends you had on before, and then all these people like, and then you've got me. You got me. Yeah. It's just like evening was going really great, and then now you've got me to rattle on about some shite. What are you thinking, Master of all? What are you guys thinking? Put me on here, Christ!
Well,
I thought you were like reputable. I think you guys were reputable.
Okay. There must be some reason you're here. But welcome, Iain. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
Quite so long.
Loved listening to all those dudes and dudettes before me. It was great. What a lovely evening. Delighted to be involved. So thank you.
But we don't save the last till least. In this case, we might be saving the best. I don't know, depending on your Pete. What you like, but talk to us first a bit about yourself. There must be some legendary status about yourself while you're here. You must have done something.
Well, I started life as a Calvin Klein model.
I would lend that. I see it.
And no, and then I ballooned and I shrunk. No, I suppose myself, I'm devoid of any real skills. I did terribly poorly at school, and which led me to being offered 0 university places. So when I kind of moved from home, from mum and dad, I kind of had to develop the colourful and beautiful world of bartending, which I did with gusto, and I really enjoyed it. Actually, I mean, the social life of it was paramount, of course. But then when I realized all my peers were part-time in these bars and, they were studying to be doctors or whatever it was, I was the full-time dude that was like there all the time. So I kind of had to bite. I had to kind of go for it. And I went for it. And I really the first time I tasted anything that I thought was like biblical was working for this like legend man called Ken McCulloch, who owned a string of fancy pants hotels called Malmaison. And I was the bar, like, I don't know what I was. I was like a bar. I was more than just a bar person. I was like a bar charge hand supervisor kind of dude. And I remember smelling, this sounds really obscure, but anybody that's worked in the industry with a wine apron will kind of testify that at the end of the night when you have to take your apron off and it's filled of the little foil tops, but then you smell it and you can smell different tables that you've been at. Oh, that was a Côte de Rhône, that was a Rioja. And that's when I was like, okay, Rioja, oh my God, what a party in the mouth that is. So that developed over time. And then there was this one time these like super Japanese dudes were in, and this was about, what was it? I think definitely maybe it had just come out. So it was about 94. And these like dudes were drinking Remy Martin XO, right? A funky kind of round bottle. And I remember it was like 10 or 11 pounds for a 25ml dram. And I suppose back then you're kind of in awe of somebody that would spend so much on something you consume. And I was perplexed by, gosh, they're drinking large ones. And I spoke to one of the dudes and I says, like, was it really that good for that price? And he's like, well, will you try it? You try one. And he poured me one. And I had it in a big, ridiculous brandy balloon, took it round to the back of the bar,
and by the ice machine and sculled it, you know. And I was like, there was a light bulb moment that it was like, okay, alcohol that you can consume can actually be really delicious, you know. So skip forward a couple of decades. I then got working with a family called the Morrisons, who are independent bottlers. And that's where I kind of got my teeth into how magical independent bottling is. I mean, like, I couldn't quite understand it at first. You know, well before I started working for Tim Morrison, I was like, how the hell do you buy a cask of whiskey and then do you get to bottle it with your own brand and then put their name on it and go out? I mean, it was just the most... actually, I'm still confused. I'm still kind of like that. This is mental. Like, so it was just like a whole, every day that I worked there, I was like so excited and so grateful to be doing this. And then I started North Star, and I kind of went out on my own, just stravaiging about, man, my early 40s or late 30s. I thought, oh, fuck, man, I've really got to sort something out here and do something on my own. So that's in 2016 is when I kind of was like, right, boom, limit the company and see if I can do this.
And you did.
Yeah, well, time will tell. Yeah, just started, you know. You're still learning.
Talk to us a bit about North Star first before going into this particular drink. What was the overall goal? I mean, I know you said you wanted to start on your own, you know, independent bottling, working for Morrison's. But what was the overall goal with North Star?
Well, are you sitting comfortably? Then I will begin. Okay, so when I knew I had supply of some whiskies I knew were phenomenal. And a lovely chap from Edrington before me will attest that there was some blended malt came out of that camp, Edrington, you know, quite, that was, I am sure it was Macallan, Highland Park. I mean, it must have been in Glenrothes, perhaps in Glenturret in there. And I had some access to this. And the contacts I had made in other parts of the world by working for AD Ratchery, and ultimately it's the customers I brought in that I wanted to continue with, I was like, okay, I can get it and I can sell it. I need to kind of do the math, like the Americans say, the maths. Maths. It's maths. Yeah, do all the noodles in between it, right? And make it work. And my wife is like that to me. She's like an art designer for TV and film. And she's like, yeah, go for it, do it. But if you do, you got to make it look good. But I was needing in my life like a paradigm shift, and like, actually, really, like, who is going to buy something that I decide to put in a bottle? Do you know what I mean? I was really like, you know, I'm still in awe. You know, I know what tastes good, but everybody knows what tastes good. I mean, it's subjective, isn't it? So, but when I was thinking, I used to smoke, right? I used to love those little things, right? And I never smoked in the house, of course. And then this one night when it was just a bridge between like how I'm going to start this thing, I was outside, big glass of Rioja, probably about the third or fourth one, out with Marlboro Light. And I'm not trying to romanticize this in any way, so please excuse me, but this is the God's honest truth. It was freezing cold night, and I was looking up beautiful clear skies, right? And I'm like, right, what speaks to everybody? Do you know, what speaks to everybody? Because I don't have any history in whiskey. Do you know, my father, although we're the most amazing man in the world, he's not a whiskey baron. You know, we don't, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I've got to find something that talks to everybody and something I like. So I ran back in the house and I was like that to Zoe, my wife. Music, you know, no matter who you are or what language you speak, yada, yada, you can read the language of music. That would be a great way to. And Zoe, she's like, doesn't take any fools gladly. And she's like, Iain, that is absolutely the most twee, ridiculous fact. So I'm like, right. Filled up my glass of Rioja, another cigarette, outside. And I don't know about anybody else, but we see when I'm kind of inebriated, I get quite like loads of brilliant ideas. You wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, that 90% of them were just like ridiculous, and 10%, there's maybe something there. And then I swear to God, I'm not dramatizing this. I looked up and I was like, the stars, right? Like, oh my God. Right, okay, so the stars and the math and the physics of the universe, all that kind of stuff was like, yeah, that speaks to everybody, the physics and all that kind of. So I ran back, cigarette out, ran back inside. Zoe, how about astronomy? And she's like, North Star. And I had a list of like yeses, and a list of maybes, and a list of no's. They all went into the bin, man, and I'm just like, North Star. The next day, woke up quite hangover, went to the Kelvin Grove Museum, and there's this like orrery, I can't even pronounce it now, but it's like a mechanical model of the universe, and it's beautiful. It's like brass, and it's huge, and you look in it, and it's like a Swiss watch. It's and I'm like, oh my God, there's the branding right there. There's everything. So all fell into place thanks to Rioja and Marlborough Lights.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
This is the story of how a glass of wine and a couple of cigarettes out of that can be born an independent bottler.
Yes. Oh,
absolutely.
Gosh. And there's been a lot of help on the way. I mean, I've not just been like this, like, God, okay, I've got casks and I've done this. I mean, you're going to need a longer night for me to go around the people I should thank. But I suppose I always thank Edrington. They are my, like, they are so patient. They're so kind. They were so adorable when I was waiting for my Wowger, this license you need to be able to sell whiskey in a bond. David Stirk, the legend David Stirk, who's the author, independent bottler. He, if it wasn't for him, I would, I maybe be here, but it would have been a lot trickier. And I mean, if he had a pound for every question that I've asked him, he'd be swelling about the Mediterranean in a massive big boat. Yeah, love David. Yeah, there's so many people that I need to thank, but. Anyways, that was the nucleus of it all. That's where it all kind of started. And I'm not one for being able to say no to things, sometimes to my detriment. And but sometimes in business, and I'm by no means a good business person, but I've never said no to anything. Anybody, nothing in business, and. And we touch wood, but it just seems to be, going in a direction that's kind of been all right. And I'm totally blessed and humbled by it all. So, independent bottling, like, it's a glorious, magical kind of environment that I get to swell about in every day. And there's not a morning goes by where I'm not like kind of ripping out of bed going, thank whoever's up there, whatever's happening up there. Thank you guys. But you got to break it down a little bit. We are, as independent bottlers, bottling something a very intelligent lady or man distilled many years ago, put it in some wood that somebody else decided, and then I get to buy the cask and put it into a glass bottle that somebody else made and put a cork on it and then a label that somebody else printed. So, this big thing about independent bottlers, I love it. I'm humbled but you got to strip it back down. We're just kind of filling in some gaps to let people taste things that they might not otherwise have.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, tonight, there's amazing stories of people saying, love listening to you. What a story, says Peter Gilmore. But let's talk about tonight's dram. We are trying Ardbeg, 15-year-old, 2008.
2008, yes.
And it's a Master Vault exclusive.
It is indeed, yes. Yeah, you lucky sods.
Lucky sods, but yeah.
You guys have been brilliant, like from the word go. Like I kind of had this idea, this kind of brand, and I kind of had some kind of dudes that were like up for it. But you guys, like Master and Malt, and you've got like who else? Whiskey Exchange, they were like big dudes as well. but you kind of supported me from the beginning, and I'm like really kind of lucky that you know, I'm kind of on your shelf, and so doing something like this, like a little wee nugget, is you know, it's of course.
Well, it's not a wee nugget. It's a 15-year-old Ardbeg is not something that.
Well, a nugget, like in Scotland, means like banging, gallus. Like,
not something we often try, and not something we've ever had in Pour and Sip, but obviously something, because it's of obvious reasons, but something everyone would, I'm sure, has been saying they would love to try and stuff like this. And I'm nosing this one currently. I'm just like, wow. Huge fan of Ardbeg. It says here that I don't know if there's some kind of differentiation. Let me just double check that, because my bottle is saying 61%. The paper here is saying 63.3. What is it?
I 60. No, it'll be, the bottle is correct. I don't know what the paper there says.
That's wrong.
That's like, what's that paper that you've got? Is it just
this is from the Pour and Sip tasting notes?
Right, okay. 63. No, I know the cask came in at, yeah, but 61 or something. And then when we did that, we've got an Anton Par. I don't know if you know what an Anton Par is, but HMRC, right? They're another company I really quite adore. They're just like, they're just so helpful, right? But anyways, what they need. No, I mean, when you're learning and trying to get into something, do you know what I mean? And in the bodies that you need to, you know, they give you rules that you need to kind of like adhere to. You know, it's. But my experience all the way with HMRC, from getting my Wauger to getting my Bond, they've all been brilliant, right? So, but the funny thing is with HMRC is they require by law for you to have the beakers and the thermometers and the, you know, all the bits and bobs, and then you relate to the book and you go, yeah, okay, that's like 62.1. And it's brilliant because it makes the bottling room look really scientific, and the hydrometers and all that. It's brilliant. I love it. I adore it. We all do. But the Anton Par is this little kind of straw you put into the liquid, and you press a button, and it's like gives you the alcohol by volume to about 3 billion points. And they're never, you know, I don't know which one's wrong, but
I've been told here that the paper was based on an earlier sample pre-bottling.
Well, there you go. That's
it doesn't really matter, because the shit
happens, man, when you party naked.
Here is that it's pretty fucking strong.
Yes, it is
really what
is
happening here. Let's be completely honest. So,
you see, carry on.
No, you go. I mean, 61, 63.3. I mean, it is by ABV. I'm actually nosing it, and it's not like majorly overpowering. It's obviously hugely smoky. I'm getting that wonderful Ardbeg peat, but it's quite elegant, actually.
Elegant. I was gonna say it's like, smells like a welder's lunchbox.
No, I don't think so at all. I think it's actually quite. I don't know if it's been sitting in the glass for a long time, and like I love like super peated whiskey, but this has got maybe it's like this orange note that's coming through as well, or whatever.
Autumnal kind of notes, like dried orange on a wreath around your house. I mean, you can say all these like magical words that it might kind of taste like, and I find it really, really fascinating how when you're nosing or you're at a tasting and people are going, oh yeah, it's like fucking creme brulee, like burnt creme brulee on a Wednesday when I've got jeans on. Do you know that? I mean, it's fascinating and it's lovely to listen to that people. It's opening up so much like creativity in people's minds. But you see, with me, with whiskey, and what I love about it and what makes me really creative is when it acts as a time machine. When you kind of put it to your nose, or you open up the cask, or you kind of taste it for the first time, or you even look at the label or whatever, and then it acts as a time machine, and it takes you back to a place in time when, you know, that was special. I mean, I've been quoted on this before. I did an interview with somebody, and I've put it on the website. So excuse me if I'm going over old chat that you've heard, but this very much tastes like an old noses like an old Campbelltown that I bought and moved to David Sturck's old place But when I opened it up, just like this, and on the nose, I'm like, that is that unique nose of like cold rain on hot tarmac. Do you know what I mean? And that is a really unique smell. But then that reminded me of walking down Ferry Brae in Nc'nean when I was 8 with my gran, and that's just like, my gran's of course no longer, but it brings up so much like love, and that is what kind of, I just don't smell something and go, yeah, it's like coffee and a dirty 2p coin or something. It's got to really, with me, before I bottle it, it's got to kind of hit those strings of emotion. And
this was not, none of these notes are stuff that I had during my youth, I have to say, in time and place. I didn't have these peaty smells growing up in Watford. But I have to say as well, the Campbelltown thing is interesting because there is that kind of sea spray, sea salt kind of note that is coming through for me. I'm just going to read out some of the notes because obviously it's important that everyone gets their say in these. And there are loads and loads of people mentioning about these, about bacon smell like frazzles. Stuart McGregor likes it sweaty leather, tobacco, smoked fish, burnt marshmallows, spice, all very confusing but lovely. Malcolm Tucker, colleague loves North Star. This bottling's my first real boinga. Citrus fruit enveloped in smokiness on the nose. Throw in a few raisins and a bit of cinnamon. Also, I'm just trying to find if any of these have got time and place going on, but there's lots and lots of notes. Actually, Steve Cooper saying, I so want to work for North Star Spirits right now. You looking for anybody?
Yes, absolutely. I'm looking for loads of folk. No, I'm joking. No, I tell you the structure right now of North Star if you want. Sorry, don't want to take over, but we've got a wee bond, right? A bond in Dumbarton, which is 12 minutes from my house, which is really handy. But I've got my James, who's the warehouse keeper. I've got my mate Jim, who's like helps me roll casks about, and I've got Margina and Monica in the bottling room, and you've never seen the oddest bunch of people, right? We're just like, you would never like see us in a pub, but you see the way and at break time or lunchtime, or if we're going for a drink after work, we get on really well. But you see at work, we just like gel, and it's just I'm so lucky, like really so lucky. Anybody that's up in any of your people that are tuning in wants to pop by and see this stuff, man. It's so much fun, man. It's so much fun. I've got the best team, and we had a Christmas lunch today. Went to the Bicketus Chip in Glasgow, very posh, and we're all driving, so we're all like Virgin Marys and Coke. But no, they're fucking brilliant. I just adore them. So lucky. I'm lucky, man.
So sorry, Steve Cooper, not looking for anybody at the moment.
Well, Steve Cooper makes me think he might be male.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, send in the CV and send in your
and a lot of people, Malcolm Tucker saying he's never heard anyone praise the HMRC before, and
love them.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I always pronounce your name wrong. Yanis. Sorry, it's been 3 years now, and I keep pronouncing this wrong. It keeps on getting better.
If you're talking to me, you're still wrong. It's Iain.
Yes. It keeps on getting better the more you leave it. Chris Dagnan's got a question for you. Why did Iain choose to bottle?
Oh, why? Well, great question, and sometimes the romantic side of independent bottling, like you get to go to a distillery and walk through a dunnage and open up a library of casks for you to then choose from. I think those days maybe kind of went with Samaroli, I suppose where I'm placed in the industry and my kind of where I'm in the food chain is I've got some great suppliers like the big boys, the Diageos and the Edringtons and the Pernos, but I've also got the brokers and I've got other people that really, but there are some people that offer you something like an Ardbeg, and then I'm like, okay, shit, wow. Okay, I've only done one Ardbeg. I thought that would be the last, but this one, all right, indeed a lost leader. I'm not going to, but if I was to say to that broker or bottler or whoever it was I bought it from, oh, can I have a sample? And they post it to me, and then I kind of sit in the, on my Chesterfield next to the fire with my spaniel and analyze the shit out of it, and then write tasting notes, and then get back to the supplier and say, yes, I'll take it. It's like, well, that went last Wednesday, man. You're mad. So it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate, but just shows you the growth and the speed of the industry. Is most times you need to buy blind. And I buy blind a lot. And not everything I buy blind goes into a North Star bottle, of course. But the very name Ardbeg and the very, the wood of which it was housed in for its life, I didn't really have any problems buying blind. If it wasn't for me and it wasn't something I could, get attached to and find a kind of time machine with, somebody in my orbit certainly would do. So, but yeah, that engine fume thing of Ardbeg, it's just, I'm really lucky to be able to bottle stuff like this and of course talk to folks about it. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm very conscious of the time, Iain, but I'm going to actually just invite everybody else back on who has stayed with us. So welcome back, Annabel.
Annabel, you got any casks?
We'll talk about that afterwards.
Welcome back, half of the gang. Thank you all for joining in with us. And I'm just going to ask the question, because everyone's already answering the question because they just assume it's coming and they think this is all wrapping up now. Actually, Greg Buick has just said a total flashback there, Iain. I had my graduation meal at the Ubiquitous Chip. So there you go. What has been your favourite dram of tonight, of December's box? Please let us know. Obviously, our guests won't be offended if it wasn't theirs, so not a problem at all. But please let us know which your favourite of tonight was. And just a little question: what's on your Christmas dram list? Is there any special Christmas dram that you have, Annabel?
Oh, I thought you were about to ask me which my favourite of the evening was, and I was like, but I didn't have any of them.
Yeah, what was your favourite of the evening?
Well, from November's pack.
Don't Albus like that?
Me too. November.
I mean, I can recommend a lot of the ones from November's pack. Actually, I've gone through 4 of them already. So.
Ah, brilliant.
Yeah. Christmas dram list. Can you come back to me? I need to.
Go for it. Yeah, David. What about you? You must have something.
I do. Yeah. Give me.
Go for it.
This can't be on the list if he's getting the bottle.
So
He's already.
This evening's all about the Highland Park. We know that. One of the joys of my job is I work across so many brands. One of the absolute joys recently has been what Bowmore and Aston Martin have been doing together, and the Masters Selection Series.
Can't afford either Bowmore or an Aston Martin.
Put together.
I can afford one of them. The first one in the series, the 21-year-old, with whiskey considerably older, is one of my favourite whiskies ever, and I've still got a little bit of whiskey in that. That is going to be my Christmas dram. It tastes quite spectacularly gorgeous. And the reason Aston Martins look beautiful is that everything about the design philosophy is based on the golden ratio. Without wishing to go to that in too much depth, because otherwise we'll be here until midnight. Ron Welsh, the whiskey maker at the time, teamed up with Marek Reichman, the chief creative officer of Aston Martin, and applied the golden ratio to the volume of whiskey selected from 7 different cask types to create the finished whiskey. And it's a thing of absolute joy.
I would love to try it. As Iain was saying, I think it's not going to be something that anyone's going to be buying me for Christmas. With
somebody will love you that much.
Someone might love me that much. Yeah, Iain, what about yourself?
Okay, well, I don't know. Well, Christmas. Right. So you have got me thinking. I don't want to say something like, 15-year-old Glendronach, or You know,
I know that seems simple, but that's on the vibe of what I'm kind of saying.
Yeah, no, I think, and I'm not saying this just because Annabel's here, but perhaps a dram from that distillery, not only because, you know, everything they do is brilliant, and I'm really keen.
He wants a cask.
He wants a cask. But I was at the Falkirk whiskey festival, and my wife and I and Ronnie from our distillery, we all go together as a wee kind of jolly. And we went to the stand, we tasted it, and my wife, who's a art designer, she's like, "Wow, that tastes great. Have you tasted this, Iain?" And then it was everything, encapsulating just like the people behind the stand, the liquid that we were drinking, and the branding and the ethos. And then because she was like really animated about this, that would kind of felt like, yeah, I've got a wee connection with Zoe here with whiskey, you know. And so as it's Christmas, I'd probably go for one of Annabel's favourites because that kind of meant a lot to me at the Fife Whiskey Festival. So, and I want a cask.
Awesome. Thanks, Iain.
Annabel, something by North Star.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was actually at the Scotch Whisky Awards. What was it, last week? 2 weeks ago? And yeah, you guys were up for lots of awards. So one of your most award-winning whiskies, maybe.
Well, thank you.
And what about from the November box, Annabel? I would actually be interested.
Well, I thought the Glenturret was really interesting. But I tried the Lindors first, and I think that was probably my favourite of all.
No, I do remember that. I can't remember who we had on for that, but I loved that one. Yeah, and there was a great story about that particular.
They also shared Jim Swan with us and Penderyn and others, so that's nice.
Yes, because we spoke about him during the interview. Jess, what about you?
Christmas whiskey.
Yeah,
I haven't got particularly flashy taste. I've
been no Bowmore Aston Martin.
I could try. No, one that's actually been on my list that I really want, I just haven't got myself because it's like just not a thing I need because I've got so many bottles. But I really want the Teeling Plantation cask.
Okay.
I really, really want that because I made daiquiris with the plantation pineapple rum, like for the entirety of lockdown. So, and it's actually not cursed for me, which is nice. And I just feel like there's some sort of daiquiri twist asking to be made there. And I love Teeling and I love the pineapple rum. And so this is a sign.
I know what to get you now.
And what about you, Andy?
Okay. I always go for something like Edgedour kind of vibe. Strength, that something really kind of big sherry bomb kind of vibe, something along those lines. Or
back around to your love of sherry. Then we're not still on the bourbon cask.
No. I've gone back, but I will probably be reaching for that Springbank 21. He said, there you go. This non-flashy taste, and I go for Springbank 21. That was a bad shout. I'm going
in your Maserati. Yeah.
I'm going to the Edgedour 10. There you go. Thank you. Lovely, big, huge, dirty.
I will not be doing Secret Santa with you all.
Sherry bomb, yeah. I'm just going to start reading out all the well, there's loads coming through. Sorry. Chris Turner, Nc'nean, Bimber, Penderyn, and the other two, some way behind. Okay, well, there we go. In my honest opinion, Yanis, so sorry again. In this order, number 1, Highland Park, 2, Ardbeg, then Nc'nean, Bimber, and Penderyn. Chris Randall, I could quite happily drink all of the drams tonight. Nc'nean and the Bimber are difficult to separate. C. Common Williams, my favourite was between the Nc'nean and Penderyn, which is odd as neither are peated, and I love peat, but I think Nc'nean beats it because of Annabel's manner and the eco credentials. So there you go. What a manner. TACD, Highland Park favourite for me. Chris Dagnan, Nc'nean, then Ardbeg. Steve Howdy Doody, Nc'nean for me. Simon, Highland Park for me, but the North Star was stunning. Anthony Mullins, brilliant night, but for me the Penderyn just takes it. But could drink all of them with each course of Christmas dinner. There are loads coming through tonight. I'm just going to read a couple more. Malcolm Tucker tried to win a Bowmore Aston Martin on the Master of Malt competition, but failed, hoping for Highland Park 25-year-old. Wide-eyed Bill. Such a good selection tonight. So torn between Highland Park and Ardbeg. Highland Park pips it. C. Con Williams. Oh, also, Nc'nean was the first bottle my wife bought off her own back. No input for me. Again, for the eco creds, and has a place in my heart for that reason. Also, the bottle. Ali C, Highland Park, Ardbeg, then Nc'nean for me. Long-time fan of Highland Park, but really nice to hear the stories from Annabel and Iain. C. Cooper, tough choice on the favourite opinion tonight. I'm going to go for Bimber. That was right up my street. North Star, very close second. All great drams, everyone else saying. And that is about.
There's a clear winner there.
I know, and that's really the way it should be. There should be no clear winner. I mean, we're talking about all amazing drams tonight and also different. So thank you, everybody. It feels really early still to be saying Merry Christmas. I don't know why I haven't said it yet. This is the last time I will speak to any of you guys before Christmas. So I will say Merry Christmas to everybody, even though it does feel a bit weirdly early.
It's only 2 weeks away.
But,
it's the 7th of December, Jake. You're fine.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much, everybody, and we will see you all soon. And in January, and a Happy New Year. Cheers.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.